So, caller, welcome to the show. You're live on the air. Please tell us your name and where you're calling from.
Yes, my name is Victor. I'm calling from New York. My question is, is in regards to the virgin birth in the context of Jerusalem 2,000 years ago. The question is, how would have been the Jews' reaction for knowing the claim of a woman having a virgin birth fathered by God 2,000 years ago? Thank you.
All right, Rabbi, go ahead and take it. You got the question fully on that?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, go ahead with it. Thanks.
If we could turn back the clock 2,000 years, how would Jews have reacted to the claim that the Messiah was born of a virgin, or Jesus was born of a virgin, or anyone was born of a virgin? So there's really multiple layers to this. Just a caveat, as it turns out, I think it's about 6 years ago, there was a nun. I think when I say there is a nun, I think you know where this is going right now. Believe it or not, it happened. There was a Scandinavian nun in Italy who had a baby boy. I'm not kidding. Look it up for yourself. And she said that she hadn't been with anyone, that she's a virgin and nothing happened. Well, how did they handle it? I mean, God couldn't have made her pregnant. Well, it goes without saying that her career as a nun was adversely affected. How would the Jews have responded to the claim that someone was born of a virgin 2,000 years ago? So it's not that they would have handled it the way anybody would handle such a claim today. It would even be not just more suspicious, but repulsed by it. And the reason for that is the claim that some great person was born to a woman who didn't sleep with a man was ubiquitous throughout the Greco-Roman world. Throughout the pagan world, there were many tiers of gods in the henotheistic system, which means there's a big god, but there's minor gods. At that lowest level of gods, the one where you have someone who's both man and god, invariably they're born to virgins. Or in the case of Hercules, his mother just slept with Zeus. And Zeus was a very busy person, apparently. So because all the gods of the ancient world, the god men, whether they're Alexander the Great, he was believed to be born of a virgin, Romulus, the mythical founder of Rome, born to a virgin, Pythagoras, the great thinker, mathematician, was genius. No one that great could just have been human. They had to be gods. All the Octavius, Caesar Augustus, born to a virgin. So therefore, that sort of claim, it's not just set off alarms. It's not like this doesn't smell kosher. It's that it would fall into the pattern of a very pagan idea. Now, as it turns out, the earliest Christians didn't believe that Jesus was born a virgin, or they just didn't think that that was important enough to mention. The earliest surviving Christian literature are the letters of Paul, all written during the 50s. All those that are indisputed, they're written during the 50s. Somehow Paul didn't think that Jesus' miraculous conception was important enough to mention. In Galatians 4:4, he just refers to Jesus as the son of a woman. Why not the son of a virgin? That would have been Mark, the earliest surviving gospel. Mark just didn't think that Jesus was conceived in between a union of God and Mary, and he goes, no, I don't think so. We'll just go with the paralytic guy. That's a more interesting story. You figured out by now that Mark does not include an infancy narrative, and we're introduced to Jesus in the book of Mark as an adult at his baptism. That's how the book of Mark begins. People don't get that. People go, really? And the reason they don't get it is not that they haven't read the New Testament. The reason is there's probably not a person on this planet that has read Mark but hasn't read Matthew yet, because the chronology of the way the New Testament Gospels are laid out in the Christian Bible, you're always reading Matthew first. And then, so when you get to the 678 passages in the book of Mark, you read Matthew already, and it kind of sounds very similar. That's why it's called synoptic Gospels. And people just sort of fill it in, even though it isn't there. The early Christians didn't know anything about Jesus born of a virgin, but as Christianity, which begins as a sect, a breakaway of Judaism, further spins away, the church then inculcates the virgin birth into their religion. That's why it only makes its way into the books of Matthew and Luke, written roughly the same time, written in the 80s of the first century. So by then already that was the thinking of Christians, and that's why it made it in. Matthew and Luke use a completely different plot device to explain how that could possibly happen. John, conversely, has such a high Christology, where Jesus is the Logos, so we don't even virgin birth. He's from the eternal past. He's the Logos. Whatever that means, he's big and bigger than Matthew and Luke, and therefore we don't need to talk about virgin birth because that's not when he became the Son of God. In Luke's view, that's when he became the Son of God, and you see that in the Annunciation. So there's no... Mary, the mother of Jesus, that one of many Marys, she's never mentioned by name in the book of John. She's mentioned, but never by name, because John's trying to get you away from that. So therefore, a claim of virgin birth to the Jewish ear 2,000 years ago would not have passed the sniff test. It would have triggered every alarm possible because that would match exactly what we find in the Greco-Roman world. They're all born of virgins. 2 more points is so important. A virgin conceiving and having a baby would be a minor miracle in the grand scheme of God's creation. The reason why we don't believe in it has nothing to do that God couldn't do it. And people think that, if God can have an old lady Sarah have a baby, couldn't he have a virgin? Well, of course he could. And people get all excited about that. Another point here. The virgin birth reeks of idolatry, paganism, Greek dualistic thought, which had permeated the pagan world long before Christianity. Reeks of idolatry, reeks of everything that is unholy. Here's the reason. The reason why this is so pervasive in the pagan world is the following. In dualistic thinking, there is an idea that's pervasive, and that is the following, that this material world and the spiritual world are really not compatible at all. That really the highest level is to be without this physical wretched body. We have to escape this world. Materialism is on a lower level. The idea that intimacy between a man and a woman would produce a god that's inconceivable to them. Paul says it in Romans chapter 7. The ideal is to be celibate like him. And he urges the unmarried to not get married. Where did he get that from? It's not Jewish. But in the pagan world, the idea of complete monasticism, the separation from the physical world, that's the ideal. In Judaism, that is insane. The intimate union between a husband and wife, you're in partnership with God in the creation process. So therefore, it is repulsive at its core. And that's why when I tell you that you could read Paul's writings and immediately see the Greek mind that it emerged from, I'm not kidding. In 1 Corinthians 15, when Paul's talking about the spiritual body of the resurrected Jesus is very different than the physical body. That's the way the Greek world thought. That's not the way the Jewish world thought at all. So therefore, the virgin birth, it's not just who would believe that or no one would believe that. The underlying theology that would trigger the claim of virgin birth is one that is revolting to Judaism. I always tell people, just look at Moses' parents. A man from Levi took a woman from Levi. That was it. No virgin birth, nothing. So therefore, it was a revolting idea because just, here we go again. It's here we go again. And finally, when the book of Matthew becomes known to the Jewish world, there's probably no person in human history that's more responsible for the Jewish rejection of Jesus than the author of the book of Matthew. If Matthew had never been written, many more Jews would have converted. Matthew just made it impossible to believe because Matthew lied. He mischaracterized what the prophet said. He's the one that has all these fulfillment citations. And the one I'm thinking about is Matthew 1:23, where Matthew goes much further than Luke. And it says, don't just think Mary's conceiving with child is an arbitrary. Oh, no, that's a fulfillment. What was said in the book of Isaiah was said in the prophet. And then he completely misquotes Isaiah 7:14, claiming it says, behold, the Lord of his own will give you a sign. Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and they will call his name Emmanuel, which means God is with us. I mean, you have no idea. This should be like a Rorschach test. This should be like, just figure out how many elements of Isaiah 7:14 have been ripped to pieces in order to produce Matthew 1:23. That should be like an entrance exam to get into an Ivy League school. Can you figure out how many times, in how many different ways, the original text was molested? And that's right, I use that word, molested, by the church. So therefore, answering your question, Jews would actually have been more mortified by that claim 2,000 years ago than today. Because today, that's not the typical claim, because we're not living in that kind of world where religions are beginning with people who said they were born a virgin. Joseph Smith didn't make that claim in the 19th century. Then they were really sensitive to this. Today, that's not the way things are claimed. It doesn't mean it never happens today, but it's not all over the place. Then it was, so right away, that's not just a red flag. That's not just a smoking gun. That's the whole murder scene in 4K. It's everything. So they immediately knew that this thing was not of God. And rather than Rome converting to Christianity, Christianity converted to Rome. Thank you for that question.
אדון עולם אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא